everybody, and welcome back to my channel. This is another kit review, a little bit forward than the usual kit review that you see on my channel, where I simply open the box and I make what the other YouTuber call the unboxing. I call it the kit review, and this is referred to the Fujimi model of the Ferrari 126 C2. It was the Fujimi kit made, I guess, something like 15 years ago. This is the Long Beach version, and it was very famous because it was the car driven by Gilles Villeneuve, featuring that strange double wing that was a kind of hazardous idea to cheat the regulation of 1982, mostly in a war that they did in the 80s between the Italians and the British teams, mostly Williams and also Brabham. Brabham, I remember, had an issue about the cooling system for the turbo of the Brabham that was allowing them to use water loaded inside the car that was a little cheating the weight around the car, so it was really a mess about the regulations. In the 80s the rules were probably in the beginning of a new era of evolution of these incredibly fast turbo cars of the early 80s. And Fujimi made this car that was iconical because it was anyway the chassis number 058, and it was the car driven by Gilles Villeneuve, the same car that he drove in Imola of the same year, and then in Zolder on the 8th of May 1982, when Gilles died during the test of that Zolder of the Belgian Grand Prix. That year was in Zolder instead of Spa-Francorchamps, so that was the tragedy around this vehicle. And actually, nearly all the versions of the real Ferrari 126 C2 don't exist any longer. There is only one, in my opinion, quite badly refurbished version of a C2, and it was a C2B, so it was the last evolution, the beginning car of 1983 season with they had different suspension, it was a different body shape, and they probably made a little mess up in the recreating the overall coverage of the vehicle. This Ferrari didn't have the closed body like the following version of the 80s. It was just an overall shell placed over the aluminum frame and the radiators and the motor, so it was just a covering because this was a wing car, so it was completely closed inside, to have the wing effect that was so famous together with the turbo of the 80s. And Fujimi made this model that is quite iconical, and unfortunately, all these Fujimi models are models that are paying the royalty to Ferrari company. So this box have it. This is the logo of the royalty that you find over Fujimi boxes, but this means that when these royalties expire, they are not any longer allowed to sell the model, so it is no reissues. They constantly make reissues of this model, but to have reissues of this is not simply to place it back, the mold on the machine, and to reprint the plastic, but you also have to pay it back, the royalty, so it's a little more tricky than the usual stuff they do. The biggest lack that I found in the model, it was a little bit disappointing because I was thinking that Fujimi, the modern Fujimi, have a kind of evolution from the older Fujimi of the 80s that we were used to build up in the past, like the BMW M3 E30 that was a disaster, the Mercedes 190, they were terrific in shapes, so I was hoping for a big improvement because this was a model of 15 years ago. I'm making this video now, this is middle 2024, so this is a model of at least 10 years ago, 10 maximum 15 years ago, not more. So it's not a model belonging to the 80s era, where you can understand that probably the lack of documentation and probably the lack of technology at the time, like in the Protar kit, allowed them to make a simplified model or mistaken model, so you cannot accept this from Fujimi any longer. And it was really disappointing because it was so many difficult parts and so many mistakes that probably I think Fujimi could absolutely avoid. First of all, that for nearly all the season this car featured the 15-inch rims, and despite I changed the ordinary rims from the box, I think I still have here the original to show you. This was what you get in the box, and those are 15-inch rims, 15. And it is sad because, sorry, 13, sorry, it's sad because all the season this car raced with the 15, and you can clearly see from the picture because the side of, I don't know the technical name in English, of the side of the rubber is much more thinner in all the picture of the car, including the Long Beach version. Instead, everybody here, and everybody starting from Fujimi, going to Model Factory Hero and Proter, always featured the 13-inch only and not the 15. You know, I found my own way through a guy from eBay that made a 15-inch for the Proter 112 kit to modify at least the rear wheel. You know, from the front wheel you can change a little the disposition of the ring closing the wheel, so you can fake it a little more and you can make it look like a 15 even if it is not precisely a 15-inch wheel in scale. But the rear one is really dramatical because there is too much rubber, so you cannot fake it there. So that is a critical point. And in all the model they made this kind of mistake. I don't know, because for nearly all the season, you know, the C2 raced with the 15. The real car have 3 different configurations during the 80s. They started with the beginning car, I think the car used in Brazil, where they still had Villeneuve and Pironi pilots, you know, while during the season Villeneuve died in May 82 and Didier Pironi had a nearly fatal crash in August 1982. So for the end of the season they in charge Mario Andretti, they in charge Patrick Tambay, they arrived other pilots, so it was not the same fellows arrived to the end of the season, you know. But in the beginning of the season, the first C2, you can recognize the first version car because it had this kind of front island separated from the rest of the body here, so it was slightly different on this side. That was because they had a constant evolution for the suspension of this car, while the second version, that was this one used by Villeneuve and Pironi, had this kind of coverage for the suspension that was connecting to the rest of the body here, and the third one, that was the Andretti car used in September 82. So in the lack of 3-4 months they changed nearly from race to race this car, you know. So there was so many different versions. It's nearly impossible to make one version of the same car. It was even more different because they changed the front suspension. They became made with smaller brackets like the modern cars, you know, like the modern Formula Ones, and they changed these big huge pieces of aluminium, and also the side radiator became a little shorter. You know, it was a constant evolution. As well, for the beginning, this was a really winning car. It was a car that, if they didn't have the tragedy that occurred during the 1982 season, for sure also the pilot championship would be won by Ferrari in 1982. You know, remember that in this year this car was so competitive that despite they had the problem that they have a tragedy, nearly a tragedy with Pironi, they anyway won the constructor championship for 1982. Meanwhile, the championship, I think it was won by Keke Rosberg, you know, in 1982 with the Williams, with the Arabic Williams, you know. And so Fujimi had this opportunity to make this incredibly important and iconic model. This is one of the most loved Ferrari ever by the Tifosi, you know. And indeed they made so many mistakes. First of all, as I said, I made a list of the mistakes that I found. This is my personal opinion, so I hope that you can find it useful for your own build, if you can find the solution. In my humble opinion, the best solution ever it is currently to buy directly the Model Factory Hero kit. That is absolutely better, and of course cost, I think, 4 or 5 times more than the Fujimi box, so it's very different range of price, if you can still find them, because they are extremely rare and they became extremely pricey at once, even more because also Model Factory Hero have the same issue of the royalty. So if you are lucky to cross one of them, already this model to me was quite expensive. I bought it from a fellow in Poland that nearly scammed me. I don't want to say that Mikal scammed me because he's incorrect. He made it surely in good faith, but he sold me this model complete with a lot of extra done. That was an incredibly good plus at the time when I bought the model, because they featured an FMD photo etched set, plus a lot of accustation details for the wheels, for placards. There was a huge amount of good details. The biggest problem ever was that they cannot fix the second problem, the second very big issue that this model have from Fujimi, that was indeed, for example, this part. This is a critical part because in the real car they were made in transparent fiberglass, and instead in the model they are molded in flat black plastic. This is a huge mistake, because there is no way that you can paint a black plastic in a transparent way. The color should become like that, and it's impossible to do. You know, you can do whatever you want, but it's impossible to do. So I was hoping when I started this model that the FMD model that I took from this guy was complete, and it was not. It was already started. Somebody tried to cut the hub. They also provide a completely photo etched hub. That is a little bit tricky, because then you have to have all the part and the suspension. I don't know if it is honestly worth that part, but it's part of the kit. But mostly there was the giant missing of, and they included that in the FMD kit, of the transparent resin air duct for the brakes. So I could not finish this model right now. I'm completely stuck, and I cannot finish the model. I have to find a solution. I know that Indicals made them in 3D parts, and they sell them through Shapeways. Unfortunately, the Expedition and so on make it, and they need at least a couple of them, you know, make it quite pricey, you know, for the type of model. I wanted to have this model complete, because I already had the FMD kit that I paid for, and it came without that part. So for me this was a huge missing, you know. I think I found it here. You can see here, you see I sent it to the guy, this part. You see that is the parts. All these resin bags were completely missing. It was part of the suspension. I can live without. This was part of the hub of the wheels when you want to show the wheel completely outside, also because they have the vents disc, the brake disc completed. But you see the part, that resin part, is exactly the transparent part that I'm searching for, and I don't have it in my kit, so I cannot finish this model. This is a critical part. I mean, I wanted to finish it this way, paint it in a little tint yellow, but there is no way that you can do this stuff with the flat black plastic from Fujimi. You know, this was the original color of the plastic. This is a huge mistake, because also on the instruction sheet they marked like a different part. So my point was, why didn't they simply molded it in transparent plastic? Fucking easy. Why not? Extremely disappointing, this stuff. So the 15 that are 13 in the box, plus that type of plastic, that is really a killer for this model, you know. And nowadays this model is also became extremely rare, because for this problem of the royalty, they are completely out of stock, and who have the kit usually keep it and save it. Also, this is a guy that committed the model to me, so this is a build for one of my clients. As you probably know, I build up model. If you want to contact me, I can build models. You know, I have a big list of clients that ask me for different type of model, trucks, Formula 1, GT, racer, military stuff, planes. So I build everything, you know, just not, I think, ships, because they are too big and too long. And it was disappointing, because I wanted to do as much as I could one of my best model, a competition mod, but I cannot finish it. I had a lot of photo etched set. This is nearly full photo etched. I made all the interior for the engine. Also, the engine is a little bit fantasy, you know, because all the cable that you can see here, all the connections are not present in the model, and it is sad, because it is anyway really well done. The steering wheel, I had to change it. I don't know why they featured the mysterious steering wheel with the double side, much bigger in the, probably the big one was that way. I don't know. I seen several pictures of Villeneuve driving. You know, I'm a big fan of Gilles. It was one of my favorite driver ever of my childhood, one of my heroes. I had a big poster of Gilles Villeneuve. It was really a constant in my life. I love so much. This Canadian little pilot was really a desperado, so for me was really, Gilles is Gilles. I mean, it's my favorite driver, you know. So I have many pictures of Gilles with the helmet driving, and the helmet and the steering wheel was absolutely not like Fujimi did. That was, I had to completely rebuild it, you know. I understand for the seatbelt and so on. Okay, the seatbelt, I make it in tissue with photo etched set. You have the bucklets coming from the FMD set, so that is stuff that you have. But Jesus Christ, place it at least. The famous fire extinguisher. The fire extinguisher is ultra famous. It's a double one. You can only see one, but there is two. A bigger one and a smaller one forward. They didn't place it inside the box. Why? Is one fucking little pieces. I go mad for this. It was the biggest occasion to do something really nice, and then there is several mistakes in the shape of the external body part. You know, I have no clue to report all these mistakes that I found during my build to all of you, because if you are here, it means that you want a particular type of quality models to build it up. So to see this type of mistake is really disappointing. If you see, for example, the picture of from this angle, you can see that clearly. Look how it is around at the side of front end. In reality it was not. In reality the front final shape of the C2 was this way, was extremely much more sharp and narrow, you know, and extremely more narrow. This is too big, it's way too big. In the same way they made a mistake in this curvature here, that is so soft here, instead in the real one goes down much more harder, you know. So in this point the protar kit is more correct than this in this side. The same for this round part here that is so soft, in reality is much more sharper the angle here. It is so typical, you know, every time that you see the helmet of Gilles and you look at this corner, you see at once this kind of mistake. Another mistake that I found was in the side of this part of coverage, you know, they made it so parallel. Instead in the real one they come parallel on this side and then they close in a different angle in this point. So also this is also a mistake. So all this front end is I think nearly completely off, I dare to say. So it's extremely sad because it was a very great occasion they had to make a super model. When they are complete, it is really eye-catching. This is a model that I think can be absolutely easy in a competition. If I have the time, probably I will do it soon if I still have the model in my hands, because I made so many effort and so many details that I think is worth the trial to do a competition with them. But you know, these are kind of shape mistakes that are extremely hard to modify. I mean, you have to rebuild completely the upper side of this model, and it is not possible. I mean it's something that you better go for something more detailed, something more precise. In this case they also provided in photo etch set. I didn't use them because for me it's a nonsense, you know. Also is in a point that when you close the model, this was by request a model that also had, I also made interior part, but you can only see part of it. There was all the motor, all the intercooler, you know. Also the side of the intercoolers, they placed these parts. This is the two side part that go after the radiator. Inside here there is a radiator in this position, and at the end you will find this part. But if you see the real picture of the real stuff, in the left one there is two big bulge, probably for some parts inside, and they are not present in this one. You see both the side, both the parts are made this way. This is what you get from the Fujimi kit. There it is, no bulge at all. Another mistake. So was honestly really disappointing for me to build up this stuff, and I'm so sad because this was so important car, and I never seen this type of mistake made by Tamiya, you know. And this was not an old Fujimi kit, this is a quite recent Fujimi kit. Also had the general appeal that all the decal set was nearly off of proportion because they all always look a little too bit small, you know. And I know that exists also the tab with decals to modify that, but I didn't get for this kit, so I prefer to increase the details and so on and close it like it is, because anyway at the end it's a very nice model. So this is the biggest mistake and biggest issue that I found in this model. I hope that you find this kit review useful for you and for your purpose, and take your own conclusion about this Fujimi kit. It was for me extremely disappointing. So the 126 C2 in this configuration, Long Beach, Imola, very famous, where Gilles was still alive, and then the infamous Zolder car. It is one of my most important model ever. So I have this car in all the scale. Remember, I have it in 143, all the Tameo kits, 124, Proton and so on, 120, everything, 112 and 1.8 from Procom. Procom is also probably the nicest model, but you know, it was a model that I paid nearly 20 years ago more than 2,000 euros, so it's little off price, you know. I just keep it and I will never build it up. I just keep it together with some other special from Model Factory here and so on, and for my own private collection, and I will keep it just because I love it so much. This pilot, the one that I will go on building up is the 143, the 120, maybe the 24 again, but the middle scale, you know, that I can have in my showcase, maybe some 112 from Prota. I get it, I have it, and I have the review on my channel. So that's it, guys. I hope you liked this video, and like and subscribe, and see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.